Welcome to the 3 Life Lessons podcast, where I, Rob Hubbard, talk to renowned figures from learning and development to uncover the secrets to their success and find out what makes them tick. Remember to like, subscribe and follow to ensure that you never miss an episode. So it's been a real bugbear of mine for many years, the way that learning experiences have always been designed for the ease and preference of the person presenting them or producing them, and they've not been human-centred, and they've not really met the learner's needs, and they've not really thought about the psychology or how the brain works or how memories are formed or anything like that. And that's why, Stella, I've been a really huge fan of yours for many years, because you have properly fought the battles for actually people designing brain-friendly learning, to understand more about neuroscience, to put that into a kind of context and into useful tools and techniques that really anyone in L&D can use. So I'm so pleased that you're here today as a 3 Life Lessons guest. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, brilliant. So Stella, first of all, so what's your current role, and can you tell us what's been your path to get there, please?
Okay, so I'm currently co-founder and chief learning officer at Stella Labs. We're a learning platform based on science of learning. How I got here, so I started with psychology, so that's what I studied at uni, and I really loved it. But when I left university, I didn't want to be a clinical psychologist, and I wasn't sure what else to do with it. And there were just loads of jobs in IT. So I became a COBOL programmer. And I kind of stayed in the IT industry. I programmed, I did analytics, I got kind of involved in expert systems when they were a thing in the 80s, I guess it was, 80s, 90s. And kind of never thought I'd really change. And then at one point I ended up with this job mix that was kind of IT support and training manager. And I wanted the IT support bit, I liked that. But the training manager, I'd only ever seen horrible training and I didn't want to do that. But met a very inspirational trainer and also some people at a conference who really showed me that actually, even technical training, because that was what I was involved in, IT training, even that could be, really engaging, inspirational and valuable and useful instead of just there. Yeah. And that kind of got me into thinking about training, and then that brought me back with my psychology. So then I was this training manager for a while. And then decided that I was going to go off on my own and become self-employed. Then I created my own company, and that went along, quite happily and successfully for many years, really. But I'd always wanted to be able to grow it, but I didn't quite have whether it was the skills, the mentality, the bravery, I don't know, to really grow it. So when I met my co-founder, Raf Samus, he was the entrepreneur, and he'd been looking for somebody with the learning kind of science behind them. So we came together and Stella Labs was born.
Fantastic. So it's obvious to see how you kind of fit together there. I mean, when you moved into that training role, given everything you knew about psychology, were you surprised at how little psychology was used in training? That must have been a little bit of an eye-opener for you.
Well, I'd already experienced that by being trained. If you're trained in IT, you go through a lot of training, and I'd always thought this is pretty awful, which was why I didn't want to get into training, because it seemed awful. And then when I realised that there was a different way of doing it, and I started kind of being introduced to accelerated learning, I thought, well, this is brilliant. This is learner-centred. This is the person who is doing the learning, doing the work. And really, as the trainer, your goal is to create an environment in which learning can happen. And that needs quite a lot of preparation and quite a lot of kind of understanding and context and supporting people. But you didn't have to be standing at the front talking at people. Yeah. And that was, for me, the big difference.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Stella, what's the first life lesson that you'd like to share with us?
So it kind of relates to the story I've just told, really, that it's about being open to serendipity and that kind of curiosity of, well, I know what I know and I do what I do, but I wonder what else is out there, and having those interesting conversations with people that lead you to think, that's interesting. I'd not really thought about doing that. Perhaps that wasn't something I saw myself in that role. And it's about being open to that and then kind of taking those small steps towards something new. And I've done it kind of with my job role, but I've also done it in terms of, we've moved to New Zealand for a few years. 6 years ago, we moved to Spain. 4 years ago, I moved to Belgium. So it's happened in terms of career, but also in terms of, life journey, that I didn't start with a big goal of what I wanted to be or what I wanted to do. And I still don't really have big goals. I kind of enjoy the journey and enjoy that serendipity of you don't know what might be round the corner.
Yeah. I saw a fantastic talk by the comedian Tim Minchin at his old university in Australia, and that's what he was all about. He said, don't have grand goals, don't be kind of shooting for something that's off over here. Instead, give your everything to the thing that's in front of you. What you're doing, just do everything that you can to do that as well as you possibly can, and be open to other experiences and other opportunities. And I thought, what a lovely kind of idea and way to go about things. So I guess there must be a certain amount of openness in your personality then for serendipity to be such a big life lesson for you.
So I think, that curiosity about, I wonder what it's like in somebody else's job. I wonder what it's like. Yeah. It's one of the things I say quite a lot. I think it probably drives my husband mad. I wonder what if, so I think it's being curious, being open, and yes, sometimes that leads to a degree of fear and concern, but I think it's about thinking, but there's good things and bad things. There's never only good or only bad.
Yeah.
There is something around, I think you have to plan for these, or when you kind of know a change is about to happen, you have to plan for it and be sensible and again, ask a lot of questions. Well, what could happen? But kind of prepare for what might be the worst, but then expect the best. Yeah. And that's kind of what I've found, that you can plan for the future and you can prepare for the future, but you're never going to know what it's like until you get there, and it's often not as scary as you think. I can give you a really ridiculous example. Yeah. When we were moving to New Zealand with 2 small children, leaving everything we knew, going to this entirely new country I'd never been, and I was really worried. This was in the days when you had to post letters. What would a post box look like? How would I know how to post a letter back to my family? And of course, it was a ridiculous thing, but I would lie awake at night thinking, what colour are the post boxes? What shape will they be? Yeah. How am I going to find them? What does a post office look like in New Zealand? Yeah. Of course, it was quite easy when I got there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, even though you have kind of concerns and worries about something, you still, because you plan and you think about it and you research, then it allows you to take those steps into the unknown. And with that step, there's risk, but there's reward as well, and learning, and new experiences.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, I love learning. So always, the more you do new things, the more you learn. If you stay in the same place all your life, you might learn a lot, but you're not going to learn the same things as if you change and move and adapt to what else there is in the world.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So, life lesson number 2.
Well, it was funny that you mentioned Tim Minchin and his sort of, be really good at what you do. And it's not necessarily be really good at what you do, but it's about persisting and being consistent. So it's once you've decided you're going to make this change, you have to kind of go with it. So there's no point spending all your time regretting it. You've made this change, so persist in it, take another step forward, keep learning, and be consistent in that, and be consistent with the way you tell your story and the way you interact with other people. So if you say, I am going to move to New Zealand, a new country, I'm going to move to Spain, I'm going to move to... Don't just say it and then kind of let it disappear. Once you've said it, you've got to act consistently with what you've said. If you say you're going to do something for somebody, you have to persist at it and be consistent. So it's kind of persistency and consistency. And I thought about an example of that, and it kind of ties back into the serendipity as well, that probably, 20 years ago, I decided to write an article for TJ Training Journal. Yeah. I cannot remember now how the suggestion that I wrote an article came across, or maybe I just had an idea and I wrote to them and probably spoke to Debbie and said, I'd like to write an article. And a colleague I was working with at the time sort of said, well, you're quite new in training and development. How can you write an article? And I thought, well, I can write. I've got some ideas. I've got some experience. Why not? So, I wrote an article and TJ published it. And then TJ came back and asked me to write a series of articles. And, these articles, they were all based on paper then. It's very different. And then I kept writing because I enjoyed writing. And then I started writing blogs and I wrote all our newsletters. And I still, write a lot of our newsletters. And then, eventually I wrote a couple of pocketbooks and I wrote quite a lot of little small ebooks. And then eventually, I wrote my book, which is published by Kogan Page. But that was all about kind of being persistent and consistent and kind of not really taking no, I suppose, for an answer. Not stopping at the first hurdle. I guess that's what it is. If I'd listened to that, she was a very good friend, but if I'd listened to her, I'd probably have thought, ooh, yes, well, I'm probably not the right person to do that.
And honing your craft as well, through all of those stages that you move through, getting better and better and kind of moving through writing more and more kind of challenging formats and forms. Yeah. And
I think that's true of any skill you learn, whether it's an art or a science or a craft. Yeah. The way to learn it is to do it and to do it more and to keep learning from it. So I guess there's the persistency and the consistency and then the serendipity as well, in that you might decide to work in a new angle or a new way of doing it, or move from writing articles to doing podcasts, for instance, whatever it might be. But it's that kind of that need. Yeah, it's the crafting of it, and it's the building the skill, isn't it? As you've just said, you build the skill as you learn. You learn as you build the skill.
Yeah, that's something I've noticed learning about musicians, that many people would say, these women and men, they're just geniuses. They're just born with it. They're doing things that nobody else can. And when you learn about actually how they work, maybe there was a bit of talent there, but there's an awful lot of graft. But the biggest thing that there is with all of them is output. Absolutely vast amounts of output. They just create and create and create. And maybe 3% of that sees the light of day, and 0.003 or 0.001 is absolutely transformationally amazing, and these are the songs that last forever. But it's all about, I had a quote from Damon Albarn the other day, talking to the drummer that worked on I think it's Africa Express with him, this absolutely brilliant Afrobeat drummer, many years younger than Damon Albarn. And Damon shared with him one of the secrets to his success, and that was keep making, just make music. Doesn't matter if you do nothing with it, just keep making music, keep doing it with different people, reflect on it, try different things, and hone your craft. Yeah.
So I'm doing an improvisation class at the moment in Dutch, which is a huge challenge in Belgium. Well, that's one of the languages. So Flemish and Dutch are pretty much the same, which is a huge new. I've done improvisation before in the UK. That was quite easy. It was in English, but now this is like a whole new way of working. But again, it's about, it doesn't matter if you make mistakes. You just keep doing it. And the more you do it, the more you learn, the more you experience. And yes, my Dutch is still terrible, but people now say to me, well, your Dutch is improving. Yeah. Because I'm trying. And I'm not worrying about getting it wrong. I think that's also really important. If you're, I don't know, saving a life, you need to be able to make sure you get it right. But there's loads of things in life that, if we make a small mistake, mostly it doesn't matter. Yeah. There aren't really mistakes when you're learning, are they? I mean, perhaps if it's something that stops you dead and you never do that thing again, that is a mistake. But if you try something and the outcome is less than ideal, but you've learnt from it, that's not a mistake. It's a learning. No, but I think that's the thing. If you keep on learning, you're always going to make mistakes, and that's okay. You just have to accept that. That my Dutch will never be perfect, but I'm not expecting it to be perfect. I'm doing it so that I can communicate. I'm not doing it so that I get a degree in Dutch. Yeah. Well, I do want to talk to you about your improv, but we'll have to do that another time. Indeed. Because I want to get on to your third life lesson, please. So my third one is, I'm not quite sure how to describe it, but it's about liking and trusting people.
Yeah.
And particularly the people that you work with. And I think the way to like people is to kind of find out about them and, again, become a bit curious about them, to understand why they do what they do, how they do what they do, to understand that even if they do something that seems not like what you're expecting, or maybe it hurts you or doesn't feel quite right, but it's about continually trying to understand that. And my experience has been, and I'm just lucky, I'm mostly like people. And my experience has been that if you like people and expect them to do their best, they really do. They live up to that. You know, most of the people I've ever worked with, I've kind of taken them on because I can see something in them. I can see that they've got a skill or a talent or just a way of being that seems to be valuable. And then you give them opportunities and they take them and they grasp them and they run with them and become, you know, even better. They were already great, but they become even better. And I'm not saying they started off as people with enormous, it's people with potential, I think. And you let them reach that potential. But I think that's about A, liking them, and B, letting them, just guiding them, but not guiding them too much, and just expecting that they're going to do a good job. And my experience has been they do. And I think that makes a nice working environment to work with people, because you can trust each other, you can rely on each other, and it's very positive, I think.
Empowering for, you know, your colleagues and team members as well in that kind of environment. Yeah,
I mean, yes, there's nothing worse than being kind of micromanaged and told what to do.
It's no good for anybody.
And I don't quite know how you recognise what those skills are in particular individuals, but I think you just meet people that you just think maybe it's part of the curiosity thing, maybe it's part of the, when you like them, you see the good things in people, you see the skills they have, the value they bring, and then it's about kind of enhancing that and just believing in them.
So would you say you're quite a good judge of character then? Are you able to kind of get quite a good sense of people quite quickly, or is that something that takes time? How does that work?
I think I am quite a good judge of character. I think it's something, you know, I've probably just learned from probably being interested in people probably helps. I think my parents were quite good judges of character, so maybe I learned something from them. And I have discovered over the years that I don't want to make like immediate judgments about people, because sometimes you discover people are, you know, amazing things about people that you didn't perhaps notice at the beginning. But I think I know who are the people that I'm going to really gel with, and who are the people I might have to work harder with, and who are the people that perhaps were best avoided.
I guess with all of your experience and expertise in psychology, you can kind of understand some of the underlying, you know, traits or things that are driving people's behaviours, and that perhaps frees you to be less reactive to those behaviours and more understanding of what's driving those, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's really true, actually, Rob. And that's probably why my children and my sisters sometimes say, "Stop psychologizing us." It's not that I'm psychologizing them, but I guess I'm kind of trying to use my career and critical faculties to try and understand them, rather than just do it as a kind of a very empathetic. Like, I think I'm quite empathetic too, but I'm not just going with that. I'm trying to blend those two parts. I think you're right there.
Fantastic. Well, Stella Collins, thank you so much for being a guest on 3 Life Lessons. It's been a real privilege to learn a bit more about you and a bit more about your life as well. And I will circle back to learn about that improv, because that's certainly got my interest. So thanks again, Stella.
Thank you, Rob.
If you've enjoyed learning those 3 life lessons, then make sure that you like, subscribe and follow so that you never miss an episode.